Hello, my name is Aviva, and today I'm going to be giving you guys some book recommendations based off of the specific tropes that you requested from me. So I asked on my Instagram stories a couple of days ago for you guys to give me in a very specific thing that you're looking for, and I will try to find you a book rec that basically matches that. And you guys definitely came through. Thank you so freaking much to every single person who took the time to send something in, because without you guys, I wouldn't have been able to make this video. And I got so many responses. I'm definitely not going to be able to get to all of them, and I apologize if I don't get to yours, but I will try to get to as many as I can before I get really tired. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight into it. The first person asked for Finding Love Online, and I actually came up with 3 different books for you. So Dear Aaron by Mariana Zapata, Alex Approximately by Jen Bennett, and then A Photo Finish by Elsie Silver, which was actually a recent read of mine. So all 3 of these, you basically found love online. Dear Aaron, it was basically like this girl ends up writing to a soldier that is like, out on duty, and they end up becoming pen pals. They end up becoming really, really good friends through like IMs and emails and letters and everything along those lines. Like literally half the book is only letters, and then like the second half of the book they're actually going to meet in person. And basically that is 100% when they found love online. Like they found love before they even met, you know what I mean? And then there's also another book, Alex Approximately, which is basically about these 2 people who they met online on this like forum where like people who really liked movies can like chat and stuff, and they really fell for each other. And then this girl ends up moving to the place that this guy actually lives in, but she doesn't tell him because she doesn't want to put any pressure on him. And then they end up meeting in real life, not realizing that they, are the same people that they're falling for online. And then it gets very complicated, but honestly, it was such a good time. It's a YA book though, but like I really, really enjoyed it when I read it. And then one last for, Finding Love Online was A Photo Finish, where these 2 people actually met on this forum when this girl gave this, she posted like a nude photo, and then this guy ends up like, propositioning her of like, oh, I'll give you like $2K a month if you send me some more nude photos, because he's really messed up. He's like a damaged hero, everything along those lines. She ends up saying no, but then they end up actually becoming friends. They talk for like a year, like every single day, and then something happens. They stop talking, and then they finally like meet in person. And then their story is going to continue. So all 3 of these books, absolutely love. They all met online, and then, they're going to end up having a romance. So highly recommend all 3 of them, for that specific trope. But either way, next up, somebody asked for When He Claims Her Kid as His. So first up, The Takeover by T.L. Swan. This book is like it's a little bit of an age gap. The girl is a couple of years older. She's a single mom. She's got 3 kids who are all menaces. And then this guy, and it's such a freaking funny book, the way that like these kids try to chase away this guy, and then he's like not having it. He's going to pursue them. He gets really involved in their lives. And then by the end of the book, he basically is like, I want you as my children. Like I'm going to take you and I'm going to be your father. It was so freaking cute. And then also Wait for It is very much like that as well. Like Wait for It by Mariana Zapata. This book, like by the ending, I don't really want to give away spoilers, but basically it kind of happens that way. Like she is a single mom, and she ends up having like, a very slow burn romance with her neighbor. And basically by the end of it, he basically like claims the kids as as his own. And he's like, no, I want to adopt you. Like I want you as my children. Like I want you to call me dad, like it was so freaking cute how it happened. So those 2 books are definitely like When He Claims Her Kids as His. Next up, somebody asked for Love Triangles. So the thing is, I'm not a huge Love Triangle fan, but I actually have a couple that I can share with you, because if you are a Love Triangle fan, these are the ones that I have read and actually enjoyed, even though they were love triangles. So like, if you like love triangles, I think you will absolutely love these 3. First up is The Summer I Turned Pretty series, which is actually becoming into like a TV series from like, Amazon Prime. So very exciting stuff for that. I really enjoyed this series when I read it originally. I don't think I would love it as much now, but at the time I loved it, and it is definitely a love triangle of sorts. And then also Say You Swear by Megan Brady is also a love triangle, and it is very similar to This Summer I Turned Pretty. So if you are a fan of one, I highly recommend checking out the other, because very, very similar vibes, like beach vibes, but like Say You Swear is a little bit more college football vibe, but like same thing, still a lot of similar dynamics. And I really do think that like if you liked one, read the other. And then last up, I actually have a very weird fantasy rec for you, which is The Kiss of Deception. And I loved this series when I read it. It's 3 books, and it is a love triangle. It starts off as a love triangle, doesn't end that way. Like it has a good ending, and it had the ending that I wanted. But basically the whole first book was very much love triangle, and I was very confused the whole time. I'm like, which way is she gonna go? I'm not sure which way I want her to go, you know? So for love triangles, I think that this was a pretty good one because I really enjoyed it for what it was. So yeah, those are some love triangle recs. Next up, I have somebody asked for a tragic love story. And first up, I thought of A Song of Achilles. So I didn't personally love this book. Like, I'm just not a Greek mythology retelling, whatever this book was, like, it just didn't do it for me. Like, I found like 90% of it to be boring, even though I cried my eyes out at the end. But, you know, a lot of people like it. A lot of people, you know, hype it up and everything like that. And, you know, if you wanted to check it out, it is probably the most tragic love story you are going to come across in a book, at least that I'm aware of, because, oh my God, it's a literal tragic love story. But either way, besides for The Song of Achilles, I thought of The Kingmaker by Kennedy Ryan, which I don't know if you would consider this a tragic love story, because it does have a happy ending at the end, I believe. But I have actually only read the first book in the duology, just because like it was a little bit too tragic for me. It's basically about these two people who it's right person, wrong time. So you're following this whole story of how they keep bumping into each other, but it is just not the right time for them. So then they keep getting pulled apart, then they come back together. And then at the end of book one, they finally came back together, and then something tragic happens. So then you have to go jump into book two and like find out the ending. And I know that a lot of like bad stuff happened in book two as well. Even though I do think that this is a happily ever after, I still think that the majority of the story is very tragic. So you might really enjoy the book if you're looking for something sad and tragic. So yeah, Kingmaker by Kennedy Ryan. Something heartbreaking and painful, which I wanted to put these back to back because they're very similar, but something very, very heartbreaking I thought was Exodus by the Ravenhood series. Like, you know, the Ravenhood series by Kate Stewart, Exodus, which is the second book. That was so freaking heartbreaking and such a painful book to read. And even though it does have a happily ever after by the end of book three, it's still like my heart still hurts from there. So if you wanted to, you know, really have a very painful read, Exodus by the Ravenhood, like Exodus by Kate Stewart, Ravenhood series book 2. So yeah, that is very painful. Oh my God, I don't even want to think about it. Like, that is how painful it is. Anyway, next up we have Childhood Friends to Enemies to Lovers. So I have a couple for you. First up, I have Enemies by Tajan. So Enemies is basically a football college romance. This guy is a pro football player, and then this girl is going to college in the state that he is a pro football player in. And they were enemies as children, and then they basically, you know, they go their separate, they were friends as children, and then they end up becoming enemies. Like, puberty hits, and that's when they turn into enemies. They don't talk for a handful of years, and then now that they're in the same state, they basically, like, you know, they get back together and they're gonna have a romance. And this was one of my favorite books that I've read by Tajan. I very much did enjoy this book, and it is definitely Childhood Friends to Enemies to Lovers. Another one that I have that is very similar is Run Away With Me by Mila Gray, which is a similar situation. They were very good friends, and then something happened, and this guy ended up having to like go away for a little bit, and she basically like he never really said goodbye to her, so she is very mad at him. And now years later, he is now like a pro hockey player, and he comes back into her life, and he's like, look, I want a second chance, like, come on, talk to me. And she's like, I don't want to have anything to do with you, like, you broke my heart. And then they're gonna end up having a relationship. I recommend looking up trigger warnings for this book though, because there is stuff for like sexual assault and stuff along those lines. But if you are down for that, oh my God, I absolutely love this book. I think it's like new adultish, maybe YA, but I feel like it's like new adulty. But either way, love Run Away With Me. And then the last one that I have for a childhood friend to enemies to lovers would be Starry Eyes. So this is a YA book by Jen Bennett, and I really did enjoy this book. This was another one of those, like, you know, they're friends as children, and then I don't remember what happened really that made them like not talk for a couple of years, but either way, they're now about to go on a camping trip with their mutual friends. Like, they still have mutual friends, even though that they don't talk. And then they end up getting stuck, like, you know, in middle of nowhere with each other. And then they're going to have to hash out their feelings of like, well, why are we enemies still? Like, I want to be more than like friends, you know? And it's a good story. I really liked it. It was one of my favorite Jen Bennett books that I read. So highly recommend that for childhood friends to enemies to lovers. Next up, somebody asked for a social outcast hero. So the first book that came to mind for this one is By Your Side by Casey West. So in this book, you're basically following this girl who is in high school. So it's like a YA book, but she is very popular, and she ends up getting stuck in the library over like a very long weekend. Maybe it's like Memorial Day or Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Like, basically it's like a 3-day weekend, and she ends up getting locked in the library by herself. And then she finds out very soon that she's actually not by herself, but one of the people that are like, she she goes to school with is actually stuck in there with her as well. And he is like the outcast. He is like the guy that nobody really talks to. He's kind of like the weirdo. And then they end up getting close over the next 3 days. And then it's a whole story about that. I don't really want to give anything away, but basically it is definitely a social outcast hero because like she is popular and he is like, the weirdo of high school sort of stuff. So yeah, By Your Side by Casey West. And then very similarly to that, somebody asked for an innocent and sheltered hero or heroine. And the first book that came to mind was Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. So I actually don't talk about this book often on my channel because it was kind of like a letdown for me because this is a very, very hyped book and I did not love it as much as I was expecting to love it. Even though I still see why people enjoyed it, it felt a little bit more YA to me than it should have considering the ages of the characters, if that makes sense. So either way, I kind of just I didn't really love it, but this is definitely an innocent and sheltered hero. So this guy is actually deaf. I can't remember the full story, but basically he is like the outcast of his small town, and this girl basically comes in and she meets him and she's very drawn to him. She kind of wants to get to know him, but everybody in town is like, oh, stay away from him, he's a weirdo, you don't want to have anything to do with him. And she's like, I don't know what you're saying, I like the guy. So she ends up pursuing him and getting close to him, and then they end up becoming friends, and then they're gonna end up having a romance. And it was a very, very he was very innocent and sheltered. I can't even begin to tell you how sheltered he was, but if you read it then you'll get it. And basically if you were looking for a hero like that, then I think Archer's Voice might be the way to go because it was a solid read. I just personally didn't like it as much as everybody else seems to love it. You know what I mean? But anyway, next up I have somebody asked for Billionaire Guy and a Small Town Girl. And I thought of Make Me Bad by R.S. Gray. So in this book, it's basically a bad boy, good girl situation. And this guy is he does live in this small town, but he kind of owned the town. His name is literally on everything. And he's obviously a billionaire, and he ends up getting into some sort of trouble, has to do a little bit of community service. And he ends up doing it where this girl works, at the library. And then they're going to end up becoming close. And she's basically going to ask him to make her bad because her father is the sheriff of the town. And, basically nobody wants to really get close to her. And so therefore she's very sheltered and she doesn't really, she's never really done anything interesting. So now that she kind of has become friends with this bad boy billionaire, she basically wants to do some interesting stuff. So he basically says yes, and then they're gonna end up having a romance. Really, really enjoyed this book, and it definitely fits into the billionaire guy with a small town girl. So highly recommend that one. Next I have, let's see, a sweet romance that takes place in Canada. So the first one that I thought of was Off to the Races by Elsie Silver. So this is book 1 in the something ranch series. I forgot what it is, but basically it's a horse racing book, and it definitely takes place in Canada. It takes place on the West Coast, near Vancouver area. It's a small town romance, but I really enjoyed it, and 100% it is a Canada book because I just remember them talking about Vancouver a lot. So anyway, that is that. Next up, somebody asked for Small Town Enemies to Lovers, but no single parent. Very specific. I appreciate, your specificity. Is that how you say it? Specificity? I don't even know. I probably shouldn't have even tried to say that word. But either way, you get what I mean. And I thought of Anything You Can Do by R.S. Gray. So this book is childhood enemies that ended up going out of town. They both became doctors, and then they came back to town, and now they are fighting for the family practice in this tiny town. So they've been literally enemies since day one, and then they're obviously going to end up having this very cute romance. So I very much liked this book. It was forced proximity because they were working together, and I really did believe in this enemies. It was for sure an enemies to lovers. Sometimes how it was requited love. This one very much felt you felt how much they couldn't stand each other and how much they got on each other's nerves, and I really appreciated that. So yeah, small town enemies to lovers romance, but no single parent. I got you. Let's see. Next up, somebody asked for an academic rivals to lovers. So first one that I thought of was obviously Rose and Connor from, the Addicted / Calloway Sisters series. So Kiss the Sky. You do have to read the entire series to finally get to their book. But basically, if you want to commit, then those are definitely some academic rivals. And I very much did like their story. Another thing that I thought of was Today, Tonight, Tomorrow by Rachel Lynn Solomon. So this is actually a YA book, and you're basically following these two people on the last day of high school. Like they're about to graduate the next day and their entire class is doing this like some sort of scavenger hunt, and they have been rivals the entire time, and somehow they end up like, you know, joining forces and trying to win together, and then they're gonna fall for each other, and then it's gonna be a whole thing of like, oh well, maybe we shouldn't have been rivals the whole time because we kind of, you know, could have gone along much better than this, you know. And like they hated each other for 4 years, and then they spend one night together, and all of a sudden they're like, I think we have a lot more in common than we thought. So, you know, it was a very cute story. I very much liked it for what it was. If you're down for a YA book, Academic Rivals, then I highly recommend that one. Next up, somebody asked for a book where, you know, the characters are dealing with addiction. So, I mean, this is very classic, but the first one that I thought of was the Addicted / Calloway Sister series, because the first books start off with Lillian Lowe, and she is a sex addict and he is an alcoholic, and literally the entire series is basically about that. So if you were looking for like an addiction sort of story and you have not read the Addicted series, then like that is the series for you. And honestly, I did think of one other series that people say is very similar to the Addicted series, which is Stay With Me. And I don't know the author's name, but it'll be on the screen obviously. But either way, I have not read this series because I have heard that in book 2, there is something along the lines of cheating, and I really didn't want to go about it. And I heard that the cheating is somewhat revolved around the idea of like that he was like, you know, back on his addiction of sorts. Like I don't know what it is that they're dealing with, but I think that maybe they met in like I don't really know because I haven't read the book, but basically if you're into addiction, maybe look up Stay With Me, like, because, you know, I know that it does involve those type of ideas, but I haven't read it because I do know that book 2 deals with cheating and I wanted to avoid it. But, you know, a rec, even though it's not a full rec for me because I haven't read it, you know what I mean? I hope you get it. But either way, this is taking a very long time, so I'm just gonna go through a couple more because I'm getting quite tired and I haven't taken a break, and honestly it's like getting hard to breathe, you know. But either way, let's go through Grumpy Boss with a Happy Employee with International Vibes. This was very, very specific, so props to you. I thought of 2 books that were both very similar. They're both nanny romances. And first up is Broken French by Tasha Boyd. So this is like a billionaire guy, and he ends up taking this nanny from like America. Like he is French, and they're gonna end up going like on his yacht for like a summer trip in the south of France. And this girl from America, like she was from like Boston or something, she ends up like going overseas and like being his, you know, nanny, and then they're gonna end up having a romance. So very international vibes, very billionaire boss sort of vibes. And then also very similar, Mr. Masters by T.L. Swan was also a nanny romance, but this was like international versus international. Like this girl, she was Australian and she was taking a year off, and she's gonna end up going and working for this guy somewhere in Europe as his nanny, and then they're gonna end up having a romance. So both are very similar stories. One, Mr. Masters is much steamier, but like, you know, they're both really good, both billionaire guys, both, you know, exactly what you asked for. So I got you. Let's see. Let's do one more. So Classmates to Lovers. I thought of Only When It's Us, which was a college sports romance where these 2 people are classmates, they don't really get along, and then they're gonna end up having to work together. So it's kind of like a frenemies to lovers sort of situation. And there is also like Def Rep, like later in life Def Rep, and like it was a really good story, a little bit of a slow burn, but definitely Classmates to Lovers. And then also Dear Ava is it's an interesting story. Definitely recommend looking up trigger warnings because there's a lot of stuff like along the lines of sexual assault. But basically this girl one day is, you know, she's sexually assaulted, and then she decides to go back to school to try and find out who assaulted her, because she knows it was someone like on the football team, but she doesn't know who it was. So she basically gets to school, nobody really wants her to be there, and she gets a note in her locker saying like, look, I'm on the football team, I didn't do it, but I would love to be there for you because I've kind of had a crush on you for a long time and I really missed you when you were gone, so like let's be friends. And she's like, I'm sorry, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And then she ends up meeting him in person. Obviously they don't really get along, and then, you know, it's slowly going to find out that like he is the guy that sent her the letter, blah blah blah, you get what I mean. And then last up, I did think of one more, which is The Deal by Elle Kennedy, which is another classmates lover sort of situation. I mean, very popular book. It does take place in college. It's a hockey romance. He is a hockey player. She is a very smart girl in this class. He needed some help, so we asked her to tutor her. She says no, but like she has a crush on somebody else, and then it basically gets into like a fake dating situation of like, look, you tutor me and I will fake date you to get your crush jealous. And then obviously they're gonna fall for each other. So really liked all three of those books. And yeah, that is all of the recs that I'm gonna go through. Honestly, I had a little bit more that I was planning on going through with you, but like, I feel like this video was long enough, and honestly, I got quite tired. I probably should have like taken breaks in between this, but like, whatever, we just did it and it's fine. Last up though, I did want to leave a request for you guys because somebody asked for when she is grumpy and he is the sunshine. And I thought of, for this book, like for this rec, I thought of like maybe from Luke Up with Love by Mariana Zapata, but honestly, I wasn't so sure if like he was very sunshiny or not, so I didn't want to like fully put it out there. But I personally would absolutely love to read a book like this. So if you have any recommendations for me and for the person who requested this of when the girl is grumpy and the guy is actually a sunshine, then please leave a comment down below because I would very much love to read a book like this. Also, if you have any recs for any of the, the tropes that were requested in this video, feel free to leave some comments down below. People would obviously love to get as many recs as they can. So let's continue the conversation there. But either way, if you enjoy this video, then please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. And anyway, thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. And with that said, until next time, enjoy reading.